imagine pulling into a service drive and either it's backed up to the road or you pull in and nobody even looks at you. Moving over to working with us, as soon as you pull into a service drive, having somebody in a uniform, shirt tucked in, they're smiling, they're waving you in, they open your door, they have a tablet or a clipboard, they're checking you in. I think the next party that we really serve and we get amazing feedback from is the service advisor. And I think they also have very stressful jobs. And so we don't want service advisors to have to be porters or valets.
Welcome to Retention Roadmap, navigating service success for new car dealerships. I'm your host, Bill Springer. Today's podcast is sponsored by DriveSure. DriveSure helps new car dealerships remain the go-to provider for maintenance, tires, and repairs. For information on how DriveSure can help your dealership, go to drivesure.com/dealership solutions. My guest today is Joel Furno, CEO of Citron, a company that partners with dealerships nationwide to provide outsourced services like valet, porters, and other essential operational support. Citron's mission is to help dealerships deliver a seamless customer experience while allowing management and staff to focus on the areas where they can provide the most value. Joel brings a unique perspective on how outsourcing can improve dealership efficiency, enhance the customer journey, and ultimately contribute to stronger service retention. So Joel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. So, we were talking earlier, Joel, and normally what we do I do on a podcast is we just jump right into the content, but I'd really like for you to give a snapshot of Citron and what your company does, because I think it's really unique, and I think it'll really help our listeners better understand what you do and what our conversation is going to be about.
Yeah, happy to. Well, in 2006, I started a valet parking company with $200 out of my bedroom, and got really good at doing that for hotels and restaurants around Columbus, Ohio. And in 2011, we fell backwards into working with car dealers and realizing the service drive is essentially a valet operation. Customers are pulling in, they need greeted, the lot needs organized. And when that staff isn't strong and there isn't a strong first impression of the dealership, the entire process falls down in a little bit in many ways. And so we bring not only people, but also processes and leadership to provide support functions, from service drive valets to managing shuttle dispatch to pick up drop off to car wash. And our mission is really focused on providing upward mobility for hourly employees, and also making sure that we can provide dealers with a stable labor force that allows their team to execute at a higher level.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that in more detail. But before we get to that, I think outsourcing, for example, valet services is probably one of those things that doesn't immediately come to mind to the typical, service director, fixed ops director, or that type of thing. Yet, it seems to really make sense. So from an operational standpoint, Joel, how do you find that, outsourcing like your porter and valet services to a dealership really helps improve operational efficiency at the dealership? Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, great question. I think part of it is the reason why our company exists is I think the penetration of outsourcing is probably 2%.
Wow.
If you look at the industries like healthcare and hotels and hospitals, 99% of those industries outsource their parking and valet services. And so our mission is really to help provide a national solution to the automotive industry, really for the first time. I think we're the largest player in our space with around 60 rooftops out of the 17,000. So outsourced adoption for this is very low, partly because there's just not a good solution. What we found is service managers and service directors have the hardest job in the entire dealership, in my opinion. Their span of control is very large. You have customers constantly coming through your office all day, advisors, keeping a shop full of technicians, which obviously is very difficult. And then you almost have this third department of your support staff, hourly team members who either are your cashiers or who greet customers or move cars or wash cars. And you're not going to keep your lights on at your dealership by having great porters and valets. And you don't have time to interview 20 or 30 of them to hire one or two that may or may not be there with you for 6 months or a year. I think the average turnover for these roles we've heard from NADA is around 300% annually. So they're high turnover positions, and it's just a part of the business that I think service managers don't have time to get to. And so what happens when you show up at 7 a.m. and your service drive gets busy is your advisors and your technicians become your porters and your valets. and they're not able to focus fully on doing their job at their highest level. It creates more stress, and it really it prevents the dealership from running optimally from what we've
Hmm.
seen. So by partnering with us or other third party solutions, if you can find the right partner, allows the service team to really focus on their core job functions. If you're a service advisor, you can stay behind your desk. You don't have customers jumping on you as they pull into the service drive without greeting. And they're able to focus on building relationships and follow-up calls and running through the proper process to take care of the customers. Likewise, when your parking lot's unorganized and when cars are backed up on the drive, it creates throughput issues for the shop, and technicians suffer as well.
For sure. I'm wondering, along those lines, Joel, if you can help paint the picture for us of, what are some of the, if you can pinpoint one or two real operational challenges that Citroen helps dealerships solve, um, and if you can kind of paint for us a before and after picture, what do you hear from dealership management about what you've helped solve for them?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that we see is a dramatic increase in the customer experience. Imagine pulling into a service drive and either it's backed up to the road, or you pull in and nobody even looks at you for 30 seconds and your service advisor is busy. You kind of get out of your car, you're not sure where to go. You walk in, everyone's on the phones or busy, and you're kind of just left there standing around until somebody talks to you. And even 15, 20, 30 seconds can create kind of a unhealthy or an awkward first impression of the dealership.
Right.
Moving over to working with us, as soon as you pull into a service drive, having somebody in a uniform, shirt tucked in, they're smiling, they're waving you in, they open your door, they have a tablet or a clipboard, they're checking you in, they notice that your service advisor is currently servicing somebody else. We have a quick chat with you while you wait, and then we go and grab the service advisor to meet you out at your vehicle or take the customer in, depending on what the process is of that dealership. So for customer experience, that is a massive difference in overall first impressions of the dealership. I think the next party that we really serve and we get amazing feedback from is the service advisor. And I think they also have very stressful jobs. And so we don't want service advisors to have to be porters or valets. The more time we can keep them with the customer and behind their desks, making follow-up calls, building relationships, going through their upsell progression, they're going to perform. And I also think turnover for service advisors have been pretty high over the last few years, and giving them a more stable work environment to come to every single day takes some pressure off so they can do their job better with less stress.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and one that didn't initially occur to me is that when I think of the customer experience for having a good porter, good valet experience, I think of the vehicle owner. But really, it sounds like your first customer really is the service advisor, and of course the vehicle owner. But the service advisor too gets a lot of benefit from having a smoothly running operation from that perspective too.
Yeah, just think about a day in the life of a service advisor and how hard their job is to serve the customer, and then having to jump on the service drive because the cars are backed up, you can't find your porter, or even when the service experience is done and trying to get cars back up and having to give you the keys to a customer to walk out to the parking lot. Having that in lane delivery, again, helps the customer and helps the advisor, but that's really the person that we want to help the most. Um, Additionally, our surveying and talking to service managers all over the country is the average service manager spends 10 to 15 hours on dealing with something related to the porters and valets,
Wow.
whether it's scheduling, call offs, interviewing, or having to jump on the service drive and become the most expensive porter in the country. The service manager, I see that a lot.
Yeah.
I also think little things like the lot organization, making sure that loaner cars in the right place, that we get sales out of the service spots and clean up the lot so that it's easier for the technicians to find cars and not wasting time looking for vehicles. All those little places that are small. And again, if you're dealing with a big department, it's hard to focus on these little details. Also, all things add up that affect the overall um, uh, uh, performance of a service department.
Sure.
So for us coming in and trying to help grease all those things together with getting good people on the service drive with the right leadership, the right processes, and putting the right SOPs in place. Really, our passion is helping make the service department a better place to visit, a better place to work in, and more efficient
Yep.
overall.
Yeah, in my experience, Joel, a dealership that really excels in customer satisfaction and customer retention does a million different things right. It's typically not one really big thing that they do well and are average and a bunch of other things. It's a million different things that they do right. So, do you have any metrics that you can share? And this might be difficult to measure. Any metrics you can share around how your services actually can have a measurable impact on the customer experience?
Yeah, a couple obvious ones. We've seen CSI go up in just about every store we've gone into, and obviously we can't take all the credit for that. It's a team effort, but we set and enable dealers to not lose surveys through little things like that arrival process or departure process, and
Right.
give their team a better ability to serve their customers. So CSI gross per RO. I mean, I think it's common sense to think if somebody's pulls in and they have a great first impression of the dealership, they're going to be a little bit more gracious throughout the entire experience, and also probably say yes more,
Yeah.
and also giving more time to the advisor to make sure that those things are happening, those conversations are being had. Um, One that I wasn't expecting that we've learned recently is we actually have seen dealers top grade their advisor staff and be able to schedule more customers with less advisors because of the support resource. I know some 20 groups measure what their unapplied labor expense is, and I think it's natural to want to keep your unapplied labor expenses low. But I
Sure.
think the thing you have to think about is that unapplied labor, support staff labor, is going to go somewhere if you're not paying for it,
Yep.
and you're moving that labor and that weight onto revenue producers versus the expense of the $15-16 an hour valet who's out servicing your customer. So that's one challenge we see is, yeah, your personnel expense might go up, but if you don't have that expense, what is it actually costing you to put that weight back on the other revenue producers, which can be
Right.
tough to quantify.
Yep. Yep. Interesting.
So yeah, seeing more appointments being scheduled per advisor, and also the shop for the time to completion, we've seen that improve as well.
Yeah, and I would also think that, I don't know how many dealerships do this, but doing like, customer or employee satisfaction surveys, I would think that you would see a measurable bump, particularly among service advisors, with respect to, their satisfaction with their role in the dealership when they've got a smooth running, porter and valet operation for sure.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a good enhancement for us to make, is to do the survey before and after. Anecdotally, we've had advisors call meetings within our first week and tell the management team this is the best decision you've ever made to bring this group in.
Yeah.
So we've heard anecdotal stories around that, but I think certainly morale and culture is improved when that level of support there, and how much the team appreciates the investment to bring in the support to make sure that they can do their jobs better.
Right, right. Talk to me a little bit about scalability and flexibility and what you bring to the table there for the dealership. Many dealerships face fluctuating staffing levels, either because of fluctuating demand or just issues with staffing. How do you find that outsourcing really provides the flexibility to the dealership that a traditional staffing level struggles to achieve?
Yeah, with most stores and service departments being open 65 to 70 hours a week, it's really hard to get a good blend of full-time and part-time employees to cover those hours when you need the most support. Most dealerships are front loaded, so 7 to 11 is the busiest point. When you have a handful of porters that are full time, and you're trying to make sure they don't go into overtime and make sure they're getting their hours, we see a lot of times where dealers will stagger in. Bill comes in at 7, and John comes in at 8, and then Tim comes at 9. Well, you've missed your peak in the morning when you only have staff kind of scattered to arrive. And then you have the most labor in the middle of the day when there's nothing going on in the service drive and people are standing around their cell phones. So
Yeah,
we take an hour by hour staffing approach of saying, what's the perfect number of people per hour of the day? Don't worry about how we're going to find full and part-time folks to cover these. Just let's work on what's the perfect number of people per hour of the day to match the demand curves. And so that allows us to be more efficient with labor hours, to make sure we're sensitive to operating budgets and labor cost. So we'll,
sure.
we'll literally put a grid together on making sure that we have the right number of people per hour of the day.
This next question may or may not be applicable, Joel. But I've had conversations recently with fixed operations directors, and their use of technology to help ease the load on service advisors, particularly at the end of the day, using a kiosk checkout where the customer has already been communicated with about that their vehicle is done. that the RO has been paid for, and that type of thing, and they can come in even after hours in some cases to interact with the kiosk, pick up their keys, and be on their way. Just wonder if you've had any experience in your firm with you know integrating with technology along those lines and how it might help the dealership.
Really, the biggest thing we've seen is a lot of dealers have invested in technology, whether it's the Hunter machines or others or tablets, and they're failing to get adoption on some of those.
Yeah.
And so part of our process is looking what's already been invested in and making sure that the tablets are being used. I think the tablets are great for walkarounds. I don't know why folks are still using pen and paper to record damage inspections and get pre-writes in. So we really
Yeah.
strongly recommend using the tablets and making the investment to take advantage of the technology that exists, especially for we see it more on the front end on the check-in process to make the check-in process more efficient, and do some of the legwork so the advisors can focus on that relationship with us, gathering the VIN number, doing the damage inspection, and getting that prepared for the advisor to write up the RO. On the back end, we don't use a lot of technology. I'm not super familiar with kiosks, but we very strongly, if not strongly encourage, but mandate that our clients allow us to do in-lane deliveries of the vehicle to pull the car back on the service drive. And some people have space constraints where it's not possible to do so. But let's make sure we're not just handing keys to customers and sending them to the parking lot. Let's actually pull their vehicle up and open their door for them and thank them for them visiting and spending a couple $1,000s at the dealership for their service appointment. So that one drives me crazy is when we just hand keys off to the customers and say, your car's over there in the parking lot.
Hmm.
Really making sure that we're doing a good job with active delivery.
That's great. That's great. Um, Two things I want to make sure that we touch on before we finish up here. The first is that I think you've got an interesting model with respect to dealerships hiring Citron's employees uh, for next level jobs with the dealership. Tell us a little bit about that. I think that's pretty unique and a lot of value add to the dealership there.
Yeah, I just love how this is one of the last industries that you can show up at the age of 17, 18, 19, have no idea what you want to do with your life, and you're washing cars or you're in the parts department. And 10, 20, 30 years later, you're the general manager or you're the dealer principal. And so the career paths that exist in this industry are really fantastic. And I've met so many great fixed ops directors and GM and principals who start off in entry level positions, that the last thing we want to do is take away the pipeline of great people that can start off on the front lines and move up and who have seen every part of the business. I think it's so
Hmm.
valuable to see that. I think you have a lot more compassion for technicians if you've actually worked with them, and vice versa. And so
Of
a
course.
porter sees everybody. They get to work with all of that. So we have always had a $0 placement fee if any of our clients want to hire our people into elevated roles, into service advisors or into the shop or into the sales floor. It's a win for our person, for them to make $15, $16 an hour and have an opportunity to earn a salary and move up in that way. Is a career path we advertise. We talk about it from day one in orientation. Why you're here, not just to park cars for $15 an hour, but you're the face of the dealership, and if you'd like to grow, there's opportunities to do that. I think last 12 months, we've had about 140 of our employees get hired to work directly for our clients, and we celebrate that. So
Wow.
always tough to
Absolutely.
lose a good person, but we're really happy for them. And it's great to walk on a service drive and see three of our ex-employees. They're now service advisors, and they're doing really well and making a great living for their family. So,
Absolutely. Got to be a
we
lot of pride in that and seeing
yeah,
that, I'm
can't
sure.
wait till a Citroen employee is a dealer principal someday. That's kind of the next
That's
bucket
right.
list
I'm
for
sure
us.
it's going to happen. I'm sure it's going to happen. That's great. I think one of the other things I'd like you to touch base on, Joel, is we obviously with the Retention Roadmap podcast, we talk a lot about retention, and I think one of the areas of retention that is probably has the lowest hanging fruit, if there is such a thing today, is in that service to sales handoff. Identifying customers that are coming in for service who may be in the market for a new vehicle, or maybe they don't know that they're in the market for a new vehicle, but but with additional information can become a prospect for the dealership to sell them another vehicle and start them on another lap of that customer journey. And I think you've identified that as an opportunity for not only the dealership but also for Citroen as well. So tell us a little bit about what the future looks like for that.
Yeah, I think what we're challenging ourselves as we look in the mirror and say, how can we make Citron add even more value to our clients and to the industry, especially when there's uncertain economic climate and there's tariffs and there's a lot of noise going on. And given the fact that any labor is expensive, right? So how can even what would be considered non-revenue producing labor be turned into finding opportunities for found revenue inside the dealership? And so one of those channels are with how difficult it is to buy used cars now. There's 30 to 100 used cars coming into the dealership every single day. I think everyone's identified that the service drive presents great opportunities to identify trade-in opportunities, but it's really hard to implement a service to sales initiative and buy cars up the service drive. It just takes, there's a lot of steps in it. And so what we've been able to try to do our part is that part of our process that we're piloting and getting great feedback on so far is, as our team is already highly trained on the word tracks to greet customers, just making a very simple inquiry. Hey, would you like a free appraisal while you're in for service today?
Mm-hmm.
If the relationship with the customer is already there, they're already greeting them, then it's a simple way for us to identify 15% of the ROs coming in that would be interested in appraisal. I think to buy more used cars, comes down to a numbers game of appraising more vehicles. And so just
Yeah.
by generating appraisals every single day, they might not buy that day, but now they're thinking about that. It's the seed's been planted, and hopefully they'll come back to our dealership to trade their vehicle in versus going to Carvana or to CarMax. So I think planting the seeds early in the buy cycle or in the life cycle of that vehicle, even if it's a 1-year-old vehicle or so, asking, we're not shoving KBB offers in their face. We're just simply asking, would you like us to do a free appraisal while you're in for service, as almost a service enhancement? And if the answer is yes, then we get them checked into the service advisor, and then we text the sales team, whoever is designated to handle that, and the team will come out and help with the appraisal and give the customer a number.
That's great. Yeah, that sounds like just a fantastic opportunity to really just inform the customer about what their options are and what the value of their vehicle is, and that may be the first step towards a repurchase and getting that customer trade in a vehicle, repurchasing another vehicle, and then getting them to come back again and again for service. So I think that's a fantastic opportunity you've identified there.
I would say too, for the majority of the dealers who are going to continue to manage their valets and porters in house, this is a great opportunity to kind of put your arms around these guys, give them an opportunity for increased compensation, which makes them want to stick around from a retention standpoint. I think it pushes everyone to want to jump on those doors and really greet customers if they know that they can make $10 or so to get an appraisal. We encourage focusing on the appraisal being the metric for a payout versus if the customer ends up buying or selling their car, just because you want more volume of appraisals. And so tying the incentive to the appraisal volume and not the end result gets the team motivated, especially on that level. And it also encourages your sales team to build a relationship with those guys and help train
Yeah.
them on that, and to integrate. You're kind of integrating everything together. So I think from an employee retention standpoint, when you're talking about these low level employees, it's a great opportunity for them to earn what could be life changing money, and also get reps in that could be eventually be your feeder pipeline into your buying department. And with some of these technologies out there, I really love what Brian Kramer and the folks are doing over at AccuTrade. What they've done with that is they've enabled everyone in the dealership to be a car buyer with the technology they have. I think it's the technology getting so good at these appraisals that you can train almost anyone now to be able to at least do the legwork of the appraisal before numbers put on it. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of benefit to making everyone feel part of the team and to integrating service and sales through the valets and porters who are touching every single customer as they arrive.
Right. No, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a lot of value there, and I suspect that the valets who are doing a great job in terms of getting those appraisals are going to be the ones who are most likely to be your future dealership principals.
Yes, exactly.
I think there's going to be a strong correlation between those two.
100%. Yeah.
Well, Joel, thanks very much for being a guest on Retention Roadmap today. You've given our listeners just a ton to think about. If any of them would like to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, my email is joel@citron.co. We have around 700 employees working inside of dealerships around the country. And, I'm available to chat anytime. And if I can help provide any insight onto how you can be even better at hiring and grooming your own staff internally, please consider me a resource.
Super. Thank you, Joel. Really appreciate you being on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Bill.
You've been listening to Retention Roadmap, Navigating Service Success for New Car Dealerships. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.